Hello. Hi. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I am Susan Vershai, founder of C Admissions. And for the next 30 to 45 minutes, I'm taking over GMAT Club's YouTube for this event to talk about the strengthening your MBA application before you apply. So if you're thinking about the application process, where do you stack up in the applicant pool, what you need to do to take action. That is important. All of those are important questions to ask. So I'm really excited to be sharing some of those insights with you today. And of course, invite you in a conversation with me. So please write your questions that you have in the comments. But even before that, introduce yourself. Tell us where you're connecting from. What are you applying this round or this application cycle? Where are you in the process? And or perhaps you're applying next year. What are some worries that you have about your application? So I would love to see everyone engaged in the comments. And then, of course, I will be answering as many questions as I can in this allotted time. So with that, why don't we get started? I have a few slides prepared for this session so we can anchor the discussion, but then of course, I would love to hear your specific questions. So for those of you who do not know me, I am the founder of C Admissions, which is a boutique admission coaching firm. My process focuses on helping applicants tell their story uniquely in their unique voice. That means I spend a lot of times with individuals focusing on understanding what those experiences have been and then brainstorming and coaching them and developing a plan of action to take in order to tell that story in a way that it is effective, communicates who they are, but also is in alignment with what the schools are looking for. I have a 94% placement rate, which means 94% of my clients gain admission to at least one of their target institutions. And of course, I leverage my past experiences, my own journey and of course, my clients' past journey. So I've been a coach for about 8 years now. To really guide and always learn with the new trends and new processes that are taking place in the application process. So with that, today I'm going to focus on the evaluation criteria. So what are schools looking at? When you hear the word holistic application review, what does that actually mean? And of course, some of the, one, assessing where you stand right now, but then also, what are some things that what are some actions that you can take and strengthen that profile before you apply, particularly if you're applying to round 1 or round 2, but also if you're applying in the future, what are some things that you need to be thinking about that you can leverage this period of time to build your profile in a way that is going to yield the most results in an MBA. So, what is the evaluation? What is evaluated in an MBA application? So first and foremost, of course, we have to remember this is an academic institution, so academics are really important. You will always see, talking applicants when they share their profile, it's going to be something like my GPA is this and my GMAT or GRE is this. Where do I stack up? And I wish it was that simple. It's not as simple as just the test scores and the GPA. It's a really much more complex process of evaluation that schools try to use and leverage to make sure that they have a very diverse classroom. So these are only data points that they use to holistically evaluate someone's profile and their contribution to the collective community at the target institution. They also look at your professional experiences, not just in, the institution that you have worked for, but also how have you progressed in your career? Did you receive promotions? Did you receive a greater scope in responsibilities? Those kinds of components. What kind of work have you been doing? What kind of impact have you had? So all of this is part of the evaluation in the professional experiences segment. They're also looking at your community engagement. I know some of you haven't done any community engagement since college because you have a really hectic workload, and that's okay. However, they are looking to see, are you someone who has a tendency of being an engaged citizen? So they will be looking at what you have done in college. If you haven't done something in college and you haven't done anything since you graduated, that can be a potential red flag. So you definitely want to evaluate these in your application. Goals are an integral part of the application process. They're the foundation to everything. They're the component that the admission team is going to use to evaluate your feasibility, or the feasibility of your goals and their potential to help you in this process. Communication skills are, of course, so important in business school because you are not all speaking the same language. And what I mean by that, of course, we have international applicants, but I also mean individuals who have come from different backgrounds. You have engineers, you have artists, you have people who've worked in NGOs, you have people who come from healthcare background, consultants and finance individuals, and people that worked in tech and all sorts of industries that is comprised of your classmates. So how do you communicate to individuals that are not in your field is going to be an important criteria of the evaluation. And that comes through the written material as well as your interview, and of course, communication style throughout the process. So make sure that that's something that you work on, particularly if you're not good at telling your story. That's something that you want to spend a bit of time brainstorming, crafting, and then practicing. Endorsement letters, by endorsement I mean letters of recommendation, and that's what LOR stands for. That is very, very important. You can have a beautiful story that you tell about yourself, about the experiences that you've had, about your contributions, about the character that you are. But if that's not corroborated by the recommenders, they don't echo the same sentiment about you, then the admission team will think that you are delusional in the experiences that you've had. So look at the who you have in your list of potential recommenders and how is your relationship with them. And then, of course, are you committed to the target institution, right? Yield is important. So have you demonstrated that you really want to attend? And the way you do that is by taking the time to connect with people, taking the time to understand what the school offers, and aligning with or there being synergy between you and them. So let's look at also the numbers, right? So I know a lot of you are focused on these numbers, and I think it's important to keep in mind, but again, the holistic review, it's not just of the numbers. So for top 10 business schools, we have an average GPA 3.62. For the M7s, which are the mega elite business schools, we have 3.64 average. GMAT 730 and 732 respectively. The GRE is equal 326, the combined score between the verbal and quant. And these are, of course, numbers that are looking at the classic edition of these standardized tests. So obviously bear that in mind. And the years of work experience are about 5. So you're also going to be looking at, if you are, an older applicant, there are potential red flags in that. And if you're a younger applicant, there are potential red flags in that as well. So you really want to evaluate where you stand. So if you have comments, thoughts, please write those in the comment section of this live so that I can see kind of where your thoughts are. So let's talk a little bit about each one of those components and start with academic. As far as your GPA, well, first and foremost, your academic performance is not much you can do about at this point. It's, you've already graduated, the time is done, you can't go back. However, That doesn't mean that you don't need to take action because you can't change your GPA. So if your GPA is below the average or below a 3.0, you want to take absolutely specific action to make sure that you are strengthening that. So this means you can look at your taking courses like HBS Core. So Harvard Business School has this pre-MBA prep course. It's between 12 and 17 weeks of coursework material, and then you take an exam after that. So 12 to 17 weeks of time that will be required to take something like this to strengthen your profile. Obviously, you need the standardized test to be above average if that's the situation for you, because you need to mitigate the lower score. You also want to look at your academic background. So are you coming with a philosophy background, or are you coming with a STEM degree? And anything in between. So what is your academic training in, and how can you demonstrate that you have quantitative skills to make the admission team comfortable knowing that you will have success in an MBA program, and then of course success in your post-MBA. They're also evaluating the academic rigor. So someone who comes in with a lower GPA, and I'm taking this from the perspective of the US institution or US education system. If someone comes from an Ivy League with a 3.2 GPA versus someone from the community college with a 4.0, obviously the rigor is going to be different, and that's going to be taken into account in the evaluation process as well. Okay. When it comes to test scores, just bear in mind that the overall score matters, but particular focus is placed on the quantitative score of the respective test that you're sitting for and submitting with the admission team. So be sure that your test, particularly the quant, is very strong. So now we want to look at your professional experiences. So when you look at your resume, when you look at your backstory, right, up till now, is there professional growth? Is it visible professional growth that has happened? And if not, what are some things that you can do right now to take action and make sure that you develop for the next few months, right? You don't have a lot of time until round one to take action here. So then you want to look at if there are any gaps in employment that you need to address. These are gaps in employment typically of 3 months or more. And you need to then, if that's the case for you, you need to then have prepare an optional letter that you will be sharing with the admission team, reflecting on that 3 months plus of the time that you have been unemployed. Have you changed jobs frequently? This is something that they're going to be looking at because employers are going to be looking at once you are going through the recruiting process. And if you're changing jobs every year, that can be a potential red flag because, hiring someone takes a lot of capital, a lot of time as well. So employers are going to be wary of offering someone a job if they're not sure that that person is going to stay there for a bit. So you want to look at that. And then if that's your situation, when should you apply, as far as making sure that you are demonstrating that you are someone who is reliable. And then how quantitatively heavy your roles have been. It's not required to be quantitatively heavy, but if, for example, you come from a humanities background, but your role is very quant heavy, or you're using a lot of analysis and data, then that can be actually excellent. So you want to just find a balance. And then also, as I mentioned earlier, goals are an integral part of the MBA journey. How relevant are is your experience in relation to your goals? So one of the things that admission teams don't want to see is feeling that someone, put a bunch of job titles and industry in a hat and just shuffled it around and then just picked something and said, okay, I want to do this, and has no relation to anything they've done in the past, no particular exposure, just they think that it's cool. That, from their perspective, is not a reliable goal. It's not something that it's feasible, because you don't really know what it takes. You don't really know what the process looks like. And you can have this sort of like romanticized idea in your head of what this job is going to be, but there's no substantial evidence to show that you are really committed to the thing that you mentioned. So make sure that there are some kind of ties to your past to showcase them, to make them feel confident that you are taking the right steps in your career. Leadership and impact is also important. Leadership does not mean that you need to have a job where your title is a leader. Rather, it's about how you show up. How do you work on the various different projects that you have? How you show up for your team, how you show up for your extracurricular work that you're doing, the roles that you've taken on in the projects. That's really important. How you have worked on those projects, how much ownership have you taken, how much contributions did you make, and what kind of impact have you had in those experiences that you choose to share. Of course, you are not going to be sharing every single thing that you've done. That would be impossible. You would need an entire book of your life experiences to share that. But these are, you have to have enough evidence to showcase that you have leadership potential and impact in the work that you have done so far. And this applies, of course, to your professional experiences as well as to your community/extracurricular experiences as well. Goals, very, very important part of the process. Goals, these are both, of course, the short term and the long term, how feasible they are, how attainable they are. That is going to be an important barometer to determine the feasibility. How familiar you are with the target industries. So if you have no exposure, you haven't done any research, you haven't shown that you know the process, that can be really difficult. Do you understand what the job market looks like for that particular role, for that particular industry? It's really important. So I use this often because it's something that I have a lot of conversations around. People having jobs that are not related to an industry. So for example, someone will have a role in sales role for let's say retail, and then they want to work in the financial services, or like they want to work in private equity or venture capital. There is no correlation between those two. You have no exposure, and it's great that you really aspire to go in that direction, and you may be able to get it, but that's not something that is a feasible goal for the admission process or for the MBA journey. So you really want to be pragmatic, but also obviously ambitious. But don't go in one direction too far. Letters of recommendation. So as I mentioned earlier, you want individuals, you want supporters who are going to write letters of recommendation that indicate that you are the right kind of person they believe in, you have a strong story that you have shared, so that collectively the admission team feels confident in their decision to say yes to you. So do you have leaders, supervisors in your current role who are going to support you? Have you spent time developing and strengthening those relationships? And if not, you absolutely need to take action immediately to be able to do that, because you will need letters of recommendation from ideally from your current supervisor, but if not, a recent supervisor who has seen you in action, meaning who can write specific details about your candidacy, who can share specific experiences and your specific contributions and impact in their letters of recommendation. So it's really, really important to have those supporters. And they need to see you in action. Like I mentioned, they need to be writing details of those actions that you have taken and the impact that you have made. And someone who is willing to do the writing, because you will be applying, or typically applicants apply to 5 to 6 different programs. And you need someone who is going to be willing to go through that 5 to 6 times, right? Even if they're not writing 5 to 6 different letters of recommendation, they still need to pay attention to it 5 to 6 times, right? So someone who is really supportive of you, who really wants to see you succeed, is important. And if you don't have those communities, then you want to really start evaluating what kind of communities you're in, especially if you have more time than just round 1. Obviously, there's not a lot of time for you to take any different actions at this point, but the environment that you are in is a very important place, and it affects your MBA application journey as well. School communication, there are applicants that may think that this is college, and I'll visit campus, I'll speak to people once I have offers in hand. That is the wrong way to approach the MBA journey. You won't get any offers if you can't show them that you are committed to the school, right? There are plenty of applicants who are able to detailedly outline what exactly they're looking for from the program, what specific steps they're going to take, and the school is going to be willing to more confident in giving an offer to someone like that than someone who writes a very generic application that only relies on what they found on the website, or only relies on a few conversations that are not really tied to who they are, not really tied to what it is that they want to do. So communication is absolutely integral part. So with that, now what are some of the things that you need to do? You need to plan your conversation with your target business school. Anytime you're relying on someone external to yourself, you need to plan that out and be able to make sure that they are that you have given yourself enough time to have those conversations, right? Someone may not be available today. Someone may not be available next week or the week after that. Maybe in 3 weeks they'll be available. So you definitely cannot wait for these conversations to happen towards the end of the application process. They do need to be a continuation, like throughout the process that you're going through. The other component is really important. Some schools do pay close attention to the conversations that you have and the consistency of narrative. So make sure that you're taking each one of those conversations like a professional networking event, networking opportunity, but also in a way almost like an interview, although it's not an interview, of course, but you always want to have a consistent narrative before you reach to those individuals. And this means that there are steps that need to take place before you can have that consistent narrative. So what I mean by that is, if your idea, if let's say you are, again, I'm going to use the same example. Let's say you want to work in retail, you are currently in retail and you want to work in financial services. But that may not be a feasible goal, but you start having those conversations with schools with that specific approach. The conversations are not going to be as great, right? Because the feasibility of that is very slim, at least from the perspective of what is visible. So then all of a sudden you change your story midway. It doesn't communicate, or it doesn't present you, or you will not be presenting yourself as someone who has thought about this process and is very serious in this process of putting together a strong application that's reflective of who you are and is reflective of what you want to do. So make sure that you're taking time to first look at your profile, look at develop your goals, look at potential schools, even if you haven't lined up the list fully yet, before you start reaching out to those representatives to have conversations that are specific to your goals and specifically what you're going to be writing in your application as well. Then your communication style is integral part of this process, right? So how strong are you at storytelling, right? It's okay if you're not strong. It's okay if you're great, obviously, but you need to evaluate yourself and look at, where your strengths lie and where your weaknesses are. And it's not about looking here at this point and saying, oh, I'm just never going to be good at it. It's really about being realistic with where you are and what you need in order to take the next steps. So if you're not good at storytelling, well, perhaps that means that you need to work with someone to help you tell your story better, right? What support systems do you have around you to help you in that storytelling? Do you have individuals who have the time and the capacity to help you tell that story, or to help you brainstorm ways to tell that story, right? If you're planning to work with a coach, you may want to do that before you do go through this entire journey on your own, and then realizing that you have done it all wrong, right? Because there are all these potential issues that you may experience in the process, right, as well. So this is all part of the evaluation of where you are, what steps you need to take, what support systems you need around you in order to be successful and effective. If you are playing the guesswork along the way, it's going to take you longer. And that's okay if you have the time. If you don't have the time, then you want to shorten the process, right? And how can you do that? What is the resources that you have the capacity to take, to leverage in order to communicate your story effectively to the admission team? And of course, this is a life-changing journey, a life-changing step to have or to take. So making sure that you are taking the right, or you're making the right moves in order to reap the rewards, right? It's an important part of the process. So with that, if you are going through this process and you want to have your specific profile evaluated, I invite you to join or to reach out, schedule a consultation with me. We will spend about 30 minutes talking about your background, talking about what are some of the steps you need to take action in. And then, of course, we will be also looking at if there is a good synergy to work together and help you on this transformative journey that you have chosen to embark on. So with that, why don't we move to some questions if they've come in? I'm going to stop my screen share. Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to be answering questions from the comments. So they won't be shared on the screen. So this way you feel free to ask away your questions. So okay, so there is someone here who is asking a question that actually, I'm not sure exactly what the question is. So MBA from Rutgers, I'm not sure if you are looking to have an MBA from Rutgers, or you are currently in the process of an MBA from getting an MBA from Rutgers. You said, or this person says, I made up my mind a bit late. I have a bachelor's in film. I'm studying for the GMAT. I'm a Marine Corps vet. Is it too late now? For this application cycle, I would not recommend submitting round 3 plus applications because it's schools, or the word on the street is that there's been an increase in applicants this application cycle. So I typically don't recommend applicants apply in the later rounds, because the chances of them being able to make the transition, meaning to get an offer, are slimmer, right? You do have to be better than applicants put on a wait list. So that is difficult challenge. So I would say use this time to really strengthen your profile and apply in round one. So round one, it's not late, but it's not early either, particularly if you are studying for the GMAT, which also probably means that you are, well, one, you're also working full time, and then on top of that, putting together an application. So it's not too late to go through the process. But if you have a more specific question, please write it in the comment. This way I can fully understand. This way I can fully understand what the question is. Okay, so there's another question that says, any advice for older candidates? Late 30s, early 40s. Yes, so this is a great question, first and foremost. Older candidates have the challenge of being able to convince or needing to convince the admission team that a full-time MBA makes sense for them. So first and foremost, do you need a full-time MBA? Can you do an executive MBA? Or can you do a part-time MBA? Those are the first sort of set of questions you need to answer. And if you say, I absolutely need a full-time MBA, then you need to be mindful of showcasing that you need the full-time MBA. If you present yourself too experienced, then there may be a question around, are you going to gain anything from your peers who have only 5 years of work experience and are 28, 29, right? So that's going to be one of your challenges, that you have to, craft your story effectively in a way that will really make the admission team feel confident that a full-time MBA is the right place for you. I would also, as an older applicant, I would be looking at schools that are accepting of older candidates. Some schools will not, and don't even waste your time applying to those schools, because it's not going to yield the result. It's just a lot of time to put together strong applications. And if they tell you, oh, we recommend that you apply to the EMBA, that's their way of telling you, don't apply to the full-time program, right? And take their word for it. Do your due diligence and find the schools that are accepting of them, of you, as far as being an older candidate. And also, when you have those conversations, do ask for individuals that have gone through the process, to have conversations with them who were older candidates and have been successful in their transition. There's another question that asks, if running my own startup as a co-founder will be considered as work experience. If you've been doing it full-time, then yes. If you're in college and doing it as a part-time sort of side hustle, then probably not. It will be evaluated. It depends a little bit, obviously, on the full story. So I'm basing it on what I'm imagining it looks like. But if you're doing it sort of on the side, it won't necessarily be calculated as work experience. So maybe this is a question about showing that you have 5 years of work experience, or maybe this is a question about showing its strength. I'm not sure, but if you want more specifics, just write the rest of that in the comment. Any advice for 38-year-old Asian working in semiconductor industry? Is it too late to apply? GMAT score 710, GPA 3.68, bachelor's in mechanical engineering, and a master's 3.84. I'm not sure where. Primary goal is to move to chief X officer in tech. Okay. So I would look at an executive MBA for you. So I would look, or the Sloan programs. So Stanford, MIT, and LBS offer the Sloan Fellows program. That's a 1-year full-time experience. MIT Sloan is the only one that offers the MBA designation, so an MBA at the end. So I would look at something like that, especially if you're making this transition. I think that would be a really great place for you to be, and also in a room with others who are more experienced than you, and also in positions that you may aspire to be in and can support your transition as well. So I would definitely look at that. That said, if you are referencing the classic GMAT test score, then I would look at increasing that number, so a retake, or if you're doing the executive MBA, the executive assessment, it's an easier test to take, and maybe easier also for you to manage that with the workload that you currently have. So consider that. But if you want to have a conversation with me about the next steps, definitely feel free to reach out at cadmissions.com and then request a consultation. Oh, sorry, I think I missed the part. Giving growth plateau and not looking for EMBA. Sorry, not looking for distance learning. Okay, I missed those two other comments. I apologize. So the MBA that I mentioned from MIT Sloan may be the right one for you. And I would say if you're applying to the traditional full-time MBA, then absolutely you will need a stronger test score. And I would say then look for programs that will be that are more receptive to older applicants. So your pool is going to become smaller in that case. Excellent. There's another question that asks, UCLA changed the class profile many times in the last weeks. They once wrote the median is 650 on class profile. Now they deleted it and you only see the average GMAT of 709. I'm not sure what the question is. So I would say this could also be the focus edition. So 650 sounds like a very low number, so it could have been an error. I wouldn't necessarily pay too much attention to that. You do want to be in the range of top 20 as far as like the test score is concerned, and to present a profile that's going to be competitive, of course. Yes, what's the best way to find which schools are more receptive to older candidates? And advice on how to phrase this question. So firstly, you are going to reach out to the admission team and you're going to say, present yourself as someone who is an older candidate. And you're going to say essentially that you are looking at a full-time MBA, but wanted to discuss the options, right? So see if you can have a conversation, a one-on-one with an admission representative. And then based on what you share as far as what you want to do, what you share as far as what you're looking to gain, they will give you their recommendation if it's an EMBA or an MBA. And if they're really pushing you towards the EMBA, then they're not going to be as receptive to the applicant with older applicants. You can look at the class profile. You'll see the maximum range of applicants as far as years of work experience is concerned. If you fall above that, it's probably unlikely that you'll be able to convert. Schools that also have a lot of different options as far as like ranges of experience, they're also least likely to accept older candidates into the pool of full-time MBA students, right? Because they have created separate programs for these different categories of candidates. Okay, so how to strengthen an application of a 31-year-old at the time of applying with 1 per year's gap in employment and a gap around 2.1 GPA, 2.1 in the Indian system. Okay, GMAT score 720 and work experience of 5. Okay, so there's definitely a lot of challenges with this particular profile. So you can't do anything about your gap in employment. I would probably wait a little bit, at least another year to apply. use this time to strengthen your GMAT score, because 720 is not strong enough as an Indian applicant applying to a U.S. institution, particularly with, I'm assuming this is a conversion of a 2.1 GPA. So it's going to be really tough. I would also expand your range of schools that you'll be applying to. So you will need to explain the gap period. 1.5 years is a substantial amount of time, and they will need to know what has happened during that time. What actions have you taken in that period of time? And then, of course, you should not be making a very complicated goal, particular, like it's a smooth transition. Otherwise, it's just going to become a little bit too complex. The same person said, any chances at top 30 US schools for me? I think so if you write a compelling story, but you will need to be above average, like significantly above the class average for the schools that you're targeting. And this would be also dependent on what your goals are and what you're looking to gain out of a program. So you're going to apply to, I would suggest, around 6 schools, and make sure that you are expanding or looking first and foremost. So don't apply to a school you would never accept an offer from, right? That's basic, right? Only applies to some that you would say, if I have no other option, this would still get me to my next step in my career. So that's the first thing. And then I would expand the reach of schools to make sure that you are you have 6 schools to apply to, that where you stand a chance. And then also I would seriously consider retaking the GMAT. Excellent. Oops, I think I went too far. Okay. So what scores should I aim for if I want to get into a top European business school? Also, how bad is not having international experience in your profile? As far as score, well, I would say you want to be above the class average of the schools that you're targeting. European schools outside of LBS and INSEAD have a lower average GMAT / GRE. So I would look at the schools that you're targeting and increase that, or be in the range or above the school averages for those schools. With European schools, just be mindful that some have specific kinds of applicants that they're looking for. So you want to be mindful of who you're choosing, or which school you're choosing to apply. It's okay if you don't have international experience, and that your MBA could be the reason why you're also looking to get an MBA or get an MBA from Europe, because just such a diverse cohort of people, and also obviously a lot of opportunities to gain that experience and exposure. So it's not negative, but you still have to add something to the classroom, right? So I would focus on sharing what are the experiences that you bring to the table that are going to be beneficial for you and also beneficial for the cohort that you are going to be a part of, right? So you have to bring something to the table in order for them to also be able to give you something, and then to get collectively you gain a lot of experiences. Excellent. Okay. 2.8 GPA in law from India, GMAT 720, have CFA and an online finance master's, work experience in a back-end role at the investment bank for local and onshore, 30 years old. Okay, so 2.8 GPA is low, 720, it's not very competitive. So I would focus a lot on that. Obviously your CFA is going to help. Online master is not sure it's going to carry a lot of weight as far as if that score is higher or not. So I would really look at strengthening your GMAT score Age, I don't see anything wrong with the age. Role, obviously, you're going to spend a bit of time talking about the impact you've had in the investment bank and the role that you've had, but also what is it that you're looking to do. So your goals are going to be an important step, an important component of your MBA journey. And you will have to explain what happened in law school, why a 2.8. I'm assuming it's 2.8 out of 4, by the way. So if that's different, then please share more comments. Okay. I live in Ohio. Which program is better, Fisher or Case Western Reserve University? I'm expecting an offer with similar fees and scholarship for both programs. Which one is better is dependent on what you want to do. Definitely Fisher has a bigger brand, I would say, but evaluate, if you have both offers in hand, evaluate the network that you're going to get and evaluate where you're going, what are your goals, and then evaluate how this particular program is going to be able to get you to those plans. If it's not clear to you, I would suggest for both of those schools, have conversations with career services teams to discuss what those options would look like, how can they support you. So this way you can make a more informed decision, especially if you're paying similar fees. I mean, I think of an MBA as it's a long-term investment. It's not something that you're only investing for the immediate goal. It's something that you're going to be leveraging for the rest of your life. So it's an investment, that's always giving, provided that, of course, you're leveraging it effectively. So make sure that your network is going to be or the students and alumni at that institutions are in the space that there's plenty of them in the space that you're interested in being. And I would make decisions based on what opportunities each school is going to offer you. Obviously, reputation matters. I've seen it firsthand, and I will. We live in a world that is such, but. You really look at what those opportunities look like for you. Okay, so I'm an accountant and I'm 36 years old. I have more than 10 years of experience in accounting or as an accountant. Do you think that I can apply to a full-time MBA? Which score should I be looking for with the GMAT in order to be accepted in an MBA program? So you are definitely on the older side, 10 years of experience. I think you can, with 10 years of experience, you can still get a full-time MBA. But of course, like I mentioned to another person earlier, you would want to have to show that you need a full-time MBA. So your story and the way you communicate about your experiences, you don't want to present yourself way too experienced, right? Meaning that you're way above your peers and you won't be gaining any insights from them. So try to find a balance that's reflective of who you are, but also reflective of needing this full-time MBA. As far as your test score is concerned, I would, depending on the range of schools and what your goals are from here, are you still going to stay in the same space, or are you looking to make a pivot? What does the next step look like for you? And that will, of course, determine also, and also, of course, thinking about where you're looking to apply. Is it an M7, top 10, top 15, top 20 schools? But typically around the 730 GMAT is the averages for the top 10. So you want to be on the average or close to average. But if you have a lower GPA, then obviously that makes changes. So I would invite you to reach out to have a consultation with me, and that's where I can see your resume and be able to give you more detailed insights on what this test score you should have in hand. Excellent. Okay, I'll continue answering questions. So I live in India, 8.95 out of 10 GPA, age 21. No extracurriculars right now. How do I build up from now, assuming I want to join a program? Oh, I love this. Thank you for asking this question. This makes me so happy to receive something like this. So 8.95 out of 10. I know in India, every school slightly gives grades differently. So are you top 10, top 15, top 20 in your class? So that in and of itself is good. Obviously, you're going to want to take the test, the GMAT or the GRE early on, and you're going to be above average, right? Particularly as an Indian applicant. Use this time. So at 21, you are, I'm assuming, probably graduated recently or about to graduate. So you're going to want to think about what are some extracurriculars you want to be involved in the future. Make sure that those are not just, and what I'm about to say next is no disrespect to anyone that does this, but I just see it so often that it's not going to move the needle in the direction of where you want it to. So like teaching English or teaching math is not going to be something that's going to move the needle. I know it's a like the people that you're impacting, for them it's really great, but when it comes to the MBA application, you want something more. Something that will allow you to have some kind of leadership role. So look for those opportunities in your community. But first, identify to what it is for you, what it is that you really want to impact first and foremost, and then look for opportunities to be able to do that. And you have a couple of years to make sure that you are building up as far as your experiences are concerned. Also, in your work, make sure that when you are taking a role, the people that you work with, that you are consistently thinking about the next step. It's not about what your job description is. It's not about, what you're being assigned. Always go above and beyond, because those are the experiences that you're going to be leveraging to speak about in your essays. Your recommenders are going to be using to talk about how you have made such amazing contributions to the companies that you have been a part of or the communities you've been a part of. So definitely build up your extracurriculars and make sure that you're continuously progressing in your future role. And then also just start thinking about, if you haven't done so already, what's your future role? What kind of impact beyond yourself, right? What kind of impact do you want to make in the world? And then reverse engineer that from the perspective of what kind of jobs will allow you to make the most impact in this space. And then what are the skills that you're going to need in order to get there? And it's not about being there now. It's about just building a roadmap for yourself in order to take the right steps and strengthen your candidacy until then. Excellent. Okay. All right. One more question. So there's a question of, what is your view on the MBA programs at Oxford and Cambridge, Judge? Would you say equivalent to the US top 15? I would say so, but of course, they're not going to be as transferable to the US. So if you are okay to work in Europe for the time being, for the next couple of years, then they're great. So I would say yes, equivalent to top 15, but they're not going to give you that much of flexibility to move from or to leverage its network to come to the United States, for example. There's some parts of the region, some parts of the world that highly value, Oxford and Cambridge. So look at where those regions are, and if those are opportunities that you see yourself pursuing, or those regions are where you see yourself living, that could be something to definitely take into account as well. Okay. Okay, so this is a good question. Does the value of importance of a GMAT score that was taken 3 years ago, is it lower? Not really. It's not. No, I wouldn't consider it as that, but I would look at it, where it is that you stand in comparison to where the class is now. If you took the test 3 years ago and you have a 720 and you apply now with that 720, well, the admission team is going to say, why didn't you take it again? Like, they're just going to judge your decisions, not necessarily the score. So I don't think it diminishes in value. I think it just shows, your decision-making process. Like, if the score it's below average of the top 20 schools, why would you think that it's okay to submit a score like that and apply to a top, like an M7, for example? Like, those are the decisions that I foresee, or the thought processes I foresee taking place in the committee meeting discussions. Should I take? Sorry. So you're planning to apply in 2027. Yeah, so definitely plan to retake it. Especially if you took it now in January 2024, definitely plan to retake it. I wouldn't wait too long to take the test. Improve, because you don't want to, like, you're going to forget and you're going to have to start all over again. So focus on the test, get to the score that you want, that you need, and then focus on the rest. All right, let's see one last question, and then I think we're going to come to an end. All right, so Indian candidate, 7.5 out of 10, which is equivalent to 3.2 out of 4, have around 4 years of experience, B2C tech company, 3 years at a startup plus 1 year at a FANG, in analytics looking to target GMAT. I don't know what FE stands for. Focus edition score, sorry. My dream is to become a product manager. Okay. So I would say you definitely need really like equivalent of 750 GMAT with the focus edition. So whatever the equivalency of that is, because you do have a relatively low CGPA if it's a conversion of 3.2. But I would say look at your class rank more so than the conversion toolkits that you use online and through various different systems, because you are coming from a different education system or measurement. So I would really focus on where you rank in your class. 4 years of experience is perfect. 1 year at FANG. I'm assuming that you are currently at a FANG, and if so, that's even greater. So I think overall good data points. Obviously, how you tell your story is going to be very important. What you share as far as your contributions and impact have been is really important. You are already in analytics in the tech space. Going to product manager makes a lot of sense, but make sure that you spend time thinking about why. The why is such an important component in this process. So hopefully that's helpful. If you want to talk more, I invite you and everyone that's listening, whether it's live or as a replay, to reach out if you want to discuss your profile and ways that I can support you in this journey. Go to siaadmissions.com and request a consultation call for a 30-minute discussion with me. So thank you so much for all the wonderful questions, and thank you for being here engaged. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, absolutely let us know, and we will be sharing more in the future. Thank you again.